Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining so promptly. Great to have everybody on the webinar today. My name is Ben Hope, and I am Vice President of Sales from EF Education First. And I have the pleasure to have with me today Nicola Bruni, Professional Services Global Director from Capgemini. Just a bit of housekeeping. We are going to save all of the questions until the end. So there won't be a lot of time for questions, but we hope to have a few questions at the end. So thank you all for waiting. So just to give you a brief introduction to EF Education First is the world's largest private education group, working with over 2,500 companies around the world. We support them with our 52,000 staff, half of which are teachers, based in our 612 schools and offices around the world, training millions of students every single year. And Nicola, would you please introduce Capgemini to the audience?
Yes, of course, Ben, and thank you for inviting me to this session. I'm really excited to be here, and weird to see that sales guy and procurement guy can work together to any project. But we will come up at the end of the webinar with some other interesting point of view. So let me introduce Capgemini as a group. Capgemini is developing technology services and digital transformation, and really bring innovation to our clients, supporting them into cloud, digital, innovation, evolution. We have a very strong 50+ year heritage, and we just celebrated a couple of years ago, late 2017, the 50th anniversary of our old logo. And to give you a sense of what does it mean to run global procurement staff into my organization, I was the procurement lead of this amazing project. So basically supporting the operation all over the 14 countries that we have, being part of the team that were selecting the logo and then running these operations. So it means going and starting with the sign on the roof of our building and going through all the web campaign of the new logo. So it was really an amazing project to be part of. Coming back to the group, we really believe that business value of technology comes and goes through people. We have more than 220,000 people around the world within more than 40 countries. And just to give an idea, we closed last year, 2018, with over 13 billion euro revenues. Maybe some of you heard about a friendly acquisition that we just launched before the summer break. So this is very interesting because it is about another consulting group, very known in the world. And this is giving us the chance also to move to another shape of organization. So cross finger for this one. And we are going also to explain what does it mean also for our procurement staff. So let me... Please.
So Nicola, that's it's really exciting news, and it sounds like you guys are on an amazing journey right now. So the topic of the webinar today is about upping our game in the procurement of professional services and thinking about how professional services can be procured and measured on a global basis. So can you tell us a little bit more about the procurement goals with Capgemini in terms of professional services?
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. And this is very linked also to the brief information I shared about my group. So just to give you some hints on our group procurement organization, we have 3 main categories. So IT and telco under X, and the one that belong to that is external resources, professional services and training. So my role is Global Procurement Director for Professional Services. So I deal with global deal only. And just to give you a sense, we have a 3-digit million spend in professional services in the group. So it's a huge bucket indeed. That's a lot to do. And my responsibility is to really support my internal business clients to set up ecosystem and of course, strengthening any external partnership and also covering compliance and governance on any procurement project. But on top of this, the main part is also to set up and define with my business stakeholder, like HR and LED in our case, the global sourcing strategy, and creating links and interaction within our complex organization that you can imagine we have to consider a different layer like countries and several strategic business unit and global business line. And so this is where the complexity comes. But the great part of the story is that in our company, we never stop learning, and the group is investing a lot on our internal talents. So coming to the learning topic, because this is also connected to how we do the global deal into our group procurement organization, especially for HR and L&D topics. We have an amazing learning hub that was funded by Capgemini founder Serge Kampf, and in fact, one of the name is Serge Kampf's campus. Indeed, right now we used to refer to it as Capgemini University. It's close to Paris, and it's a mix of an amazing chateau coming from the past and very technology that we use to run our learnings. And yeah, that's our way also to do business and to really boost our internal talents learning path. And why this is connected to the way that we do global procurement stuff is because doing global contracts and procurements and running global projects, it means, of course, to go for centralized model where you have to run collection and distribution first. So we have a central team in the Capgemini University that have the target to go across the countries and check their interest and demand that just after is going to be collected and considered as a global business perimeter to set up the global deal. So this is the interaction. So it's really an amazing way to do.
So can you take us into a little bit more detail about how, how you buy professional services at Capgemini? So.
Indeed. So it's also linked to what I mentioned. So of course, we do count on a central team that is going to go for the demand and collection across the countries and strategic business unit. Of course, we have some main pillars like setting up the global contract. So it's of course the first target. And it's not only, but we start from this by collecting the global spend, but then what we also consolidate is not only the spend or the vendor, but also the process. So it's always great to go for harmonization of the process. And this is where procurement can also contribute to business internal stakeholder. My first target is to set up as much as possible multi-year agreements and bundle contract to really go behind the barrier that the business stakeholder confirm you as a business perimeter to be considered, and to try always to stimulate the countries and the internal organization in understanding which kind of additional and not yet known, I would say, services or product they may get from the external provider. So just to give you a sense, I can share with you all and with the audience an example. I'm not going to mention the brand, but I just closed a deal with the technology solution provider, one of the most well-known in the globe, where I set up a global contracts. It was really a bundled contract with several products. And basically, with this contract, I was not only, but it was a good start, let's say, not only able to have 40% discount considering a year -1 price, but also to keep the price flat for over the duration that was set up as 3 years. And you can imagine also which kind of value you deliver to your internal stakeholder, because you can prevent any inflation issue you may face in such a long period. And on top of this, just to mention, to give you the sense what is the added value for money that you can deliver as procurement, I set up a simplified P2P process. And on top of this, we increase the flexibility on the internal location. So we move from 15% of reallocation rate to basically 100%. And this was exactly because the partner was so comfortable with the long-term partnership that we set up, that was able to move to this step.
So it's not only about the price, it's also about the process, if I understand you correctly. That there's a whole lot of sort of process improvement around the way things are bought that helps streamline and save.
Absolutely, and this is also linked, should admit, to our experience with Capgemini and EF. So it's also linked to our cases, because when 3 years ago we set up our global contract, basically what we decided is that as additional value of the business case that and the deal that we had, you were more in favor of offering additional value, like advertising campaign and let's say increasing also the promotion and adoption of the services that you were starting to provide. So what was clear is that we really need to cover very huge coverage, considering the 40 countries. And this is also linked to the topic that was mentioned at the beginning of our webinar. So if we are going to have a very big M&A as we are expecting, and let's say that we have acquisition, I don't want to exaggerate by saying every day, but for sure every year, it's really key thinking about learnings, that since the day one that you go for the acquisition, you are able to deliver this learning also to the new population. And this is what we really consider as a value from your platform, because we were running this beauty context, and you absolutely clarified that you were able to cover this kind of need.
Well, it's a very interesting scenario when customers of ours go through that. And we often find actually that mergers and acquisitions are sort of a key moment when multinationals really have a good hard think about the strategic value of English. It's a moment where maybe it wasn't on the radar so much before, but when a multinational company acquires, for example, a local French company or a local Chinese company, and realizes this company has never had to do as much business across borders before, and suddenly now from one day to the next everybody needs to speak English, that's obviously a huge moment for any company to go through, and it takes a while to sort of get through that. So why else did Capgemini need to put together a global program for learning English?
Indeed, starting from your point, it's really one of the main ones. So if I look at the current shape of the organization right now, it's really the result of the several acquisitions that we got all along the year. So just 4 years ago, we were just acquiring iGate, that is now part of the group. It was a massive acquisition. So you really need to be flexible and ready to go as per the outcome and the strategy that the organization set up, and you really need to react and to be ready to go. So at that time, we were considering that starting with a very fragmented situation where we have several providers for language courses, of course, we may also need, and it was really absolutely well noted and appreciated, to get the support for the provider that we're going to select to drive the campaign and to really work together by increasing the adoption rate. So that was the main part of the target. And what we look for when we set up a global contract is, of course, there are some key points. For sure, the product. And so in this case, and in your case, thinking about language courses and, let's say, training in general, it's really key to have an unlimited assessment always available for us, and also the reporting and data analytics available and consider as part of the deal, as part of the delivery that we were going to receive from you. This is very key because you can also track the learning curve of your employees, and then you can also get to the extension of 100% the coverage, the access at the training at any time and anywhere, really across the globe, and you can really support employees to get engaged and motivated, because there's nothing worse than setting up a project and then having the target to improve the employee learning curve, and then you fail and you invested a lot. So that's the very, let's say, risk you would like to avoid always when you set up such global investment. And
well, it's quite an interesting point there, because something that we've noticed more and more is not only that that the procurement function has been involved quite early on in an engagement, but actually we're seeing more and more this new role around vendor management and or supplier management, sort of this regular checkup to make sure that the partnership is actually going well and delivering the value that was expected. So I would like to know, if we can go to the next slide, how it is that that you guys are measuring your sort of value for money in terms of something as vague or nebulous as you know, soft skills.
Yeah. So as you may understand, I mean, that's also the move that we had, let's say, from the old procurement style and approach, by being considered just a business outcome function, while indeed now we are able to provide and to really business partnering with our internal clients. Nevertheless, we have some key metrics and KPI that we track still, like the spend. So in this case, with the EF case, we were able, jumping into the global contract by reducing the spend of over 25%, and with a very big result. So it was really, let's say, an inverse engineering approach to increase 5 times more the way of training and the way to reach our internal population. And of course, also increasing the hours that the employees were dedicating to improve their paths, in this case for learning a new language or improving the current skills, but also you can go for some similarity also with other learning streams. That's really no gap. And in this case, let's say that the outcome that we were really appreciating, we were focused on, it was the fact that we can count on an unlimited and enrollment testing and courts. And for me, from my point of view, the great point was to get the certification, because we realize, and that's also what, let's say, the new procurement professional should always try to do, how to take even more benefit than the standard way that we were using at the beginning, this one. And so that's why we also get in contact with HR heads and HR business manager by saying, we have this amazing tool, why don't you use for your recruiting process? Because the metrics is the same, is homogeneous, and will grant you to track not only the internal population, but also to have homogeneous and stable and consistent data on the people that you're going to recruit and assess. So this also the other great move that we're going to move.
So while we're talking about measuring success, let's actually dig into the numbers a little bit here. So what kind of numbers are Capgemini enjoying today?
Thinking about a classic learning path, like it is the language course that we purchased from you. Of course, we were looking at how many employees we were going to train, and we realized that we trained more than 17,000 people since when we started with this new global provision from you. And then, of course, also a huge amount of delivered study hours. And as I said, we have 100% of the organization coverage. And sorry to remark the fact that with ever acquisition, we could be ready since day one to expand and to reach out the 100% also of the new organization that may come. So it was an amazing step in, also in terms of total hours delivered to our internal community. As you know, and again, as procurement, we also look at some specific KPI and SLA if you want. So first, the appreciation of the product, of the services. So in this case, it's a mix. And we just launched basically a survey, an internal survey, if I'm right, just before the summer break. And we got almost 95% of appreciation of the product. That for us is key. And also the level the people were able to increase just by going through one course. So basically they were jumping from one from one level to the upper one. And also the let's say the comfort that people were being by getting in touch and experiencing your service. So basically they can access at any time, anywhere, and it's really linked also to our way of being consultant, even belonging to business upon function, if you want.
Well, I remember very clearly when we were first negotiating the contract with one another and building out that service level agreement. It was actually very surprising and also incredibly refreshing the way that Capgemini was already making sort of demands in terms of how things were going to be delivered, demands in terms of how it was going to be appreciated. So like you had a very clear sense of what you wanted to improve and get out of your contract. And I just remember a lot of great discussions about how we were, you know, basically agreeing that we were going to do that together and which steps each side was going to take in order to achieve that. So because I think you guys have had such a successful contract, maybe you can describe a couple of the elements that make a killer contract for you.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. And I would like also to mention that, let's say, the time where you as procurement were just waiting to receive the specs and requirements from your clients and then deliver the contract 100%, it's over. So first, we are the first one before the external provider that we challenge our internal clients, as I was saying before, by raising question and by, let's say, inviting them to consider also which other additional, different, new services or product they can get from the external provider, and to embed all of these, maybe even just optional services. So it's not the case that you have to procure since day one, and you cannot even not give any 100% and seeker commitment to the provider. But anyway, at least just to consider, to step up and to stand up and to look also the, let's say, the business scope in another way. So to go for the killer contract before we go into the, let's say, to the straight point here represented, I would like also to mention that another way that we do business, because I call this one business with our internal clients, is to go for a really agile process. So we are used right now to go for agile RFX, basically where we put everybody together, all the stakeholders together, literally sometimes in the same environment, in the same room. So business stakeholder, all the potential providers, all the respondents that you invite into your RFX process together in the same room, and you get also, you challenge them and you get in return immediately some good hints that you can use to challenge them, the next provider that is going to present in front of all the rest of the audience the next solution. But of course, as you mentioned, if you want to go for a killer contract, you should not, at least not consider some basic point like scalability, of course, and this is coming from the consolidation you may have, and of course the very specific KPIs that can give you the sense if the tool is really appreciated internally, especially for professional services, that most of the case is for your internal clients and internal population, and then how you can assure to go with very high rate of adoption and promotion. Because again, if you're considering a global investment that usually is massive, and then you have no return on investment and no appreciation from the population, it's really painful, this one. So to what can support the contract setup to go with a real killer contract, it's really to spend enough time on the business scope definition, going with more agile process, and business partnering with your internal clients. It's really key.
That makes a lot of sense. And so, you know, as a thing that I think is unclear to some maybe is sort of when procurement should be involved, because in a number of contracts we've seen that procurement sort of comes in at the last moment and you know, saves another 10% off the deal. But at which point would you recommend to the audience that procurement is involved?
Really at the early stage, and sometimes we also do the reverse. So we are inviting our clients to share upfront and before it's going to come the right timeline to launch the process and the project to share what about their needs, because as you see from our discussion, procurement could be really your reliable business partnering by going through the process, gaining the deal, and really having a lot of right and added value for money in return. So my recommendation is always to engage procurement upfront at the very beginning. Of course, it may happen that I'm always frank, so it may happen that you are engaged not at the very early stage, but then
Right.
if you run in the right mood and the business get the point, then the next time it will be a win-win.
And I remember one time when we were talking, you were saying that one of the advantages that you have is this ability to sort of spot what everybody else is doing. So sometimes, you know, when you're running a process out of the headquarters, you sort of see maybe a handful of providers that are based in your country, but it can be that you're already working with providers in numerous other countries, and there's a lot of other best practice out there. You know, how do you get how do you get visibility around all that's going on out there?
Indeed, market interaction is key. So that's why I always invest time and effort on the external partnership, because it's key also to, let's say, in a positive way, use your interaction and relationship with your external partners also to understand directly from them, therefore from the market, what is going to happen and what about the main trends, and also with the key ones, really having a frequent interaction with that, someone more formal, sometimes even more informal, but anyway, to be in contact with them and don't lose and don't stay stuck on your office, and really interact internally and externally as much as you can, because yeah, getting the sense of what is going to happen in the market and trying to prevent this one, and being an advisor for your internal clients is key, because then you really win the battle. And as I said, next time they will engage you because they recognize you really as advisor.
So as we're coming close to the end of the session here, I wanted if you could summarize with a couple of recommendations to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say that generally people ask me, okay, why should I engage you? And I'm not speaking about my colleagues only, but I mean, it's a general question that usually procurement professionals receive from any audience. I would raise it by saying, why not? Because as per what we discussed today, you really see that yeah, now we are really ready to business partnering with our internal clients. So the key recommendation for running a good global deal for professional service category that anyway has its own characteristics, I would say, is be focused on setting up the global agreements, having a central team and central people that can go across the internal organization, understand the demand, consolidate, and then really set up as much as possible multi-year contracts, extend the period, and also bundle contract, put together as many services as possible, sometimes even optional services, but anyway, give you more chance to interact and get also more attention from the provider, and really look at the right KPI to be measured to also check after the contract setup that is really what you were expecting for, and if your internal audience is happy, and go for the killer contract. So go for the scalability, and then really interact and set up the right business scope, and sometimes even, sorry to say, challenge your internal clients by defining the right business scope that sometimes is not what they are expecting really. And of course, the earlier the better. So as I said, as much more we are involved upfront, we have the chance to work together and really to save a lot of time and get really, again, more added value at the end as a return on investment after the contract setup.
That makes a lot of sense. So we had one question come in before the webinar started, and it's actually because there are a number of potential suppliers to Capgemini also in the webinar today.
Mm-hmm.
And one of these questions was, as a potential supplier to Capgemini, how should they reach out to the organization? How should they reach out to you, for example? When should they reach out, and what is the best approach?
I have, let's say, different flows with and interaction and with anybody, so they can reach me out very easily. So I do have a LinkedIn interaction, email, whatever. So I mean, I'm always really open, and I'm always looking for new opportunity in the market. So again, interaction is key, and it's never a waste of time. Of course, I also have my strategy to deliver, so that some topics I'm more focused on. But let's say that again, I'm no more in favor to use like old name like supplier or vendor. So the one that really supports you to deliver the strategy, your global sourcing strategy, for me, are really partners. So for me, it's really a reciprocal interaction. So I support them in understanding where my company is going to go. And I would expect in return also that they support me to understand where the market is going and what about the last trend. So it's really reciprocal interaction. It's two-way interaction. It's never one way.
Okay. Well, Nicola, I would like to thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your participation, and everyone in the audience, thank you very much for attending today. I hope that we have proven that sales and procurement can, in fact, get along and be good friends.
I hope
And
so.
I hope
We have
so.
one
I hope it
case.
continues
We
that
have
way
one
in the
case.
future. Yeah, we have at
Yeah,
least one data point here.
indeed.
And no, thank you very much. Much appreciated, and have a wonderful rest of your week and a great weekend.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, and take
Thank you,
care.
everyone, to join the session.
Thank you.
Thank you.